Okay, Albert.
Good afternoon. My name is Albert Praw, and I'm the chair of the board of the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles. I wish I could say hello to each of you individually. We are over 500 people on this webinar, people who care deeply about others and want to hear firsthand how we're doing our part during this international crisis. We are commemorating the Jewish holiday of Purim, an event in Jewish history where our very survival as a people was threatened. Our tradition teaches that a crucial element of any Jewish holiday is remembering and providing for those in need. And our federation has risen to that opportunity by addressing the urgent, if not existential, needs of the Jewish community in Ukraine. Federation can do our part during this emergency, as we did during the COVID emergency, because we are here 365 days of the year, strategically addressing gaps in our community, here in Los Angeles, overseas, and in Israel. Our focus during the Ukrainian crisis is to provide assistance to three important segments of the Ukrainian Jewish community. To those Jews remaining in Ukraine, we are providing cash assistance, food, and medicine to Holocaust survivors, to seniors, and to the poor. We're also providing temporary housing for displaced people and transportation to remove people out of conflict zones. To those who have evacuated to other countries, we're providing temporary housing, food, and basic needs. Thirdly, to those who intend to or are considering resettling in Israel, we're providing chartered flights and personnel to process immigration requests and absorption assistance in Israel. We're proud of our efforts in Los Angeles to raise and deliver funds to help in this vital, crucial work. Over 3,000 donors have supported this effort in Los Angeles alone, and we have raised over $2 million. We are grateful to be part of such a caring and generous community. The work you are going to hear about this afternoon is work that is made possible by you and our donor community. Let me now turn the program over to Becky Solomon-Stern, one of our key professionals involved in our efforts. Becky?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I am Becky Sobelman-Stern, the Chief Program Officer at the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles. Like you, I am deeply moved and touched by the photos you saw before the webinar and the many, many social media posts we are all seeing. We will now hear from two selfless leaders of our LA Jewish community, Lynn, the Federation's campaign chair, and Noah Farkas, the Federation's president and CEO. They are weary travelers because they just returned from Poland and the Ukrainian border, along with a dozen other Jewish leaders from around the United States who joined a 48-hour trip organized by the Jewish Federations of North America. And so I'm going to pose a few questions to Noah and to Lynn, but first, Noah, some reflections of what you saw, your general impressions, and I might add, we are celebrating Purim today, and shortly we will be around our Seder tables. What are your comparisons to what you saw and experienced? Noah?
Yes, hi, Becky, and thank you to Albert for that wonderful introduction, and to my partner on this work, Lynn, who traveled with me to Poland and the Ukrainian border. I'll just give you some general impressions, and then when Lynn's ready to join us, I would love to hear her thoughts as well. Here's what we saw. Everywhere we went, I want you to imagine with me a scenario where you see families with children playing or resting, and mothers exhausted, trying to stay close and not sure what to do, and fathers and brothers and husbands absent because men couldn't leave Ukraine because they have to fight for their country. The spirit of the Polish people on the other hand, as exhausted as the refugees are, the spirit of the Polish people is high. They are just magnanimous in their willingness to be helpful, to be kind, to help those in need. The first day we were there, we went to the Warsaw train station, and we're walking around. As most large train stations are, there's multiple levels of activity, and we came in through the main level, and right as you come in, there are all these large desks and kiosks set up. And just to give you a sense of it, there was a registration desk for volunteers. There was 2 different desks set up, large kiosks set up from the largest cell phone companies in Europe that were trading out SIM cards for free or for very little money to refugees so that they could call loved ones. There was a tea and coffee station where volunteers were making tea and coffee and bringing it on trays and handing it out to refugees, because after a very long trip, finally making it to a city like Warsaw, a hot drink on a winter day might just be the thing that you need in that particular moment. We saw a stand for dogs because people could bring their pets with them. So it was a specific refugee dog station. Outside the train station, there was several lines set up for people to receive toiletries, diapers, shampoo, canned food, boxed lunches, and then inside a tent, they had set up picnic tables where they had a soup kitchen running where people could come eat. The activity that we saw both in Warsaw and at the border itself just reminds me of the full range of human emotion, the sadness and despair on the faces of those who are fleeing from violence out of fear, and the love and the care and the generosity of those trying to help those in need. The entire spectrum of human life seen in just a very short period of time and in a very concentrated way. He asked me about Purim and Passover. Purim is a story, we're celebrating it today, where the Jewish community could have met its end, but because of several decisions by a small group of individuals, we were saved. Whether it was Mordechai's decision to speak to Esther or Esther's decision to speak to Achashverosh, those key decisions are what I would call heroic choices. Choices where if they hadn't made those decisions in those moments at that time, life could have gone a different way for the Jewish people. It's actually those decisions that we celebrate. It's not just we boo Haman or cheer for Mordechai or gawk at Esther or laugh at Achashverosh. We're actually celebrating the decisions of individuals to take the responsibility to save the Jewish community. And for those of you who have donated to our campaign, those of you who have volunteered, those of you who are on this webinar who have decided to take a leadership position and to do something about this crisis, you're like Mordechai, you're like Esther. You're making that same heroic decision. And I see the parallel as paramount. It's not just a small thing. To decide to help when others are not, to decide to volunteer because you can, to decide to give your life to this idea and to our people is a heroic thing to do. So I thank all of you for doing that, and wish you a happy Purim.
Beautiful, Noah. And thank you. Thank you for traveling. Thank you for the heroic effort to get on a plane for 48 hours. And my other heroine, and perhaps the real Queen Esther here, is Lynn Biter, our chief volunteer, our chief fundraiser. And Lynn, you went with a different perspective, and you have a different perspective. And maybe you want to share, as Noah talked about, all those women and all those children. Maybe there's a story or a reflection you want to share with this group, because that just sounds like such a powerful experience that you saw and you felt.
Thank you, Becky. You know, in many ways, I would say this was the story of women and children and diapers. We saw more diapers than I've ever seen in my life. Not dirty diapers, clean diapers. I want to express my deep gratitude to Rabbi Noah and the Federation for allowing me the opportunity to experience the efforts being taken by our Jewish communities to assist the refugees of this tragic, tragic devastation. To me, relaying one story of one mother's experience is difficult because all I can see are so many mothers and children in a miles-long line of entering a foreign country with a different language, with only the clothes on their backs and pulling their suitcases. As I was standing at the border, a woman was trying to get her 4-year-old son backpack on him. I walked up to her and said, could I help her with her suitcase? But she didn't speak English, and yet she trusted me, but she didn't know if I was just going to walk away with her suitcase. It was kind of, it was, I can't even explain how I felt. But through a translator, I was able to find out her name was Anna and had traveled for 6 days to the border with her 4-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter, having to carry one or both at different times. She was in a line waiting for a bus to go to a processing center a few miles away. They had taken a shopping center and turned it into a processing center. And as Noah said this morning, they took a shoe store and it was for volunteers, and each room, and there were beds, and every flag around the world was hanging. And these people came there and knew somebody cared. And I think that was so touching to us. But I think the most significant observation I had at the border was the deafening silence that we experienced of all these people in line, tents up and down the walkway as they come on to the Polish border, and just dead silence, probably thinking about those they left behind and wondering when their lives would find some certainty again. And I think another impression I had that was really very touching was at the Yeshiva Lublin Center. It is a hotel today, including a synagogue, but it was yeshiva, I think, built in the 1500s. And Noah, what was it, 13 miles from Mondanek?
It's only a few kilometers from Majdanek, the death camp.
Thank you. Which was, when you think about what went on there and what was going on today, the JDC took it over to house both Jews and non-Jews. They are distributing goods, including diapers, baby toys, and so much more. And I think in the pictures you saw in the basement filled with goods. We met with a woman named Irina, who was not Jewish and was living in shelters and under the staircase of their home in total fear when they decided they needed to leave. They had so much gratitude for the Jewish community. And she said when she had the ability, she was going to give back to the Jewish people. And as Noah said, Poland and the Polish people have really responded admirably. We did not go as crisis tourists, but we rather to see our partners are using the proceeds of your generous contributions. And I must say, I was very impressed by the coordination and cooperation between the organizations that we have funded.
Lynn, again, thank you. And we know that as Lynn traipses Los Angeles, Jewish Los Angeles, she will tell us more and more stories. Noah, perhaps you want to reflect a bit about why Federation, right? What were your impressions as you watch this wonderful coordination? Why Federation? Why does our system matter?
Thank you for that. Before I even came to the Federation and before I came to lead it, I think like many people are a little cynical or skeptical about federated giving and the point of having such a large organization. But since I've been here, I've been completely converted. I think the Federation is an incredibly important foundational organization in Los Angeles. But I have to tell you that in the last couple of days, the reason why Federation exists was crystal clear to me. Federation has had a tripartite relationship with the Joint Distribution Committee and the Jewish Agency for Israel for almost 100 years. We have built a global infrastructure. You have to remember that this partnership predated the state of Israel. In some cases, it predated the Holocaust. That this partnership has existed to support the global Jewish community. And in it of itself, though the three organizations, the Federation, JDC, and Jaffe, comprise the largest voluntary Jewish experiment in our history, that we take philanthropic dollars of the Jewish community globally, we put them into a system to help each other globally. And that was very evident on the ground in Poland and on the border. The number of folks, the number of people that JDC and Jaffe, I'm not going to give you the numbers, I'll let them give you the numbers, but they're in the thousands and thousands. The number of people who have gone to Israel are in the thousands and thousands. Without a strong federation system and a strong JDC and a strong Jaffe, and frankly, a strong, safe, secure, and thriving state of Israel, we would not be able to do what we are doing today. We would not be able to seamlessly work with each other to take refugees from their homes, house them, feed them, give them medical care, and move them to Israel where they can make a new life. That would not have been possible in a 3-week period without these relationships. And so we build these relationships every single day. As Eric Fingerhut, the CEO of JFNA, told me, you don't build the firehouse during the blaze. You build the firehouse so that when the blaze happens, you're there. Or as another person told me, you can't show up on Sunday if you hadn't been there on Tuesday already. This is why we exist. This is the greatest experiment in voluntary Jewish life in the history of our people, to create a global network of mutual support. And it's because of that, because of the expertise, the shared expertise, the relationships, the longevity of these relationships, and the global reach of these relationships, that when you do if you decide to support this network, this system, through these organizations, you can make real change for real people at a moment's notice. So I also just want to thank those who are joining us, Diana and Dan. They'll speak in a minute, but our relationships are just extraordinary, and I just think the Federation is a key player and has been a key player for almost 100 years.
And before we go to Dan and Deanna, I have one more question for Lynn. And I'm sure you've been getting this since your return. As members of the LA Jewish community, what can we do? What can we do to help?
Although we do not know when this crisis will end, we do know that we must stay dedicated to the Jewish communities, as Albert said, here in Los Angeles and Israel and countries around the world. They need your support, and they need it not just today, but every day. I think this is going to be a long, long crisis. I really do. I don't see these people going home very quickly. I'm not sure where they're going. And wherever they go, they're going to need our help. And they're going to need the community that they go to's help. But I think we have to continue doing what we've been doing. And I do thank each and every one of you for your continued commitment. And as Noah says, if we didn't have it before, we would not have been able to respond the way we did. So again, thank you so, so much.
And can I just add one thing? Thank you, Lynn. Could I just add one thing about what we can do? I've gotten a lot of calls for folks who want to go and volunteer. What's needed is skilled volunteer work. You have to speak the language. You have to speak Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, Romanian. You have to have a degree or some kind of background in social work, psychology, or work for an NGO that does this kind of work. What they need now is skilled volunteers. There are enough people, thank God, there are enough people, at least in Poland, who are Polish themselves, that are stepping up to help with the manual work, the basic work. The volunteers that are needed are those who have high levels of skill.
Right, correct. What we can do is what we're doing, sending money and letting the world know that we're here, that they are not alone. I think that the Ukraine people all, we talk about, we don't want these people to know they're alone. They're cared for, and the world is here for them. And unfortunately, we in LA, it's our dollars that are going to help.
So at the moment, we're going to turn off the recording. because we do have two amazing professionals with us who are part of